All right, welcome friends to our inaugural episode of Fire Your Job, Find Your Passion, brand new podcast. My first guest, Emily Shaules, the amazing Emily Shaules. So excited to chat with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty spoiled. Not gonna lie, we're sitting in my backyard in San Diego right now. It's only about 75 degrees and perfect weather as we kind of get here all year round. So I wanted to jump right in with you and just talk about kind of your background coming from pretty extensive and hectic corporate life into where you are now and what's your passions.
Sure. Okay, that's a really okay, so guess Cliff Notes version. I started off, I went straight through college and then right into law school. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a civil rights attorney and was very passionate about that. Senior year in college, when I was starting to get all of my acceptance letters to law school,
Show off.
my health tanked. And so I went home over Christmas break. I was having horrible GI symptoms, and I went home over Christmas and ended up in the hospital. And they said I needed to have my gallbladder removed, which, you know, my sister and I laughed at the doctor. I was 22. And he's like, no, we're serious. Like, book yourself into the ER now, please. And so that kind of ruined Christmas, you could say. Had my gallbladder removed and then did not feel better, honestly, afterwards. So they started doing all these tests before I went back, and I was ultimately diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and irritable bowel disease. So they put me on a bunch of meds, sent me back to college. I was happy because I had lost like 15 pounds because I hadn't eaten for a month. And
the old gallbladder diet.
Oh yeah, man, it worked wonders. And I went back to school. And mind you, my eating habits and lifestyle at the time were horrific. So I drank like a fish, ate crap. The doctor said, oh yeah, that has nothing to do with it. So yeah, whatever. So I went back and then I went to law school. So I was on all these meds, and it kind of kept everything in check for the 3 years of law school. But law school, as you know, is incredibly stressful, demanding, competitive. It's not, it's not really a good time. And so about a week after I graduated from law school, I had my hair in my face, and I flipped my neck back, and I felt something snap in my neck. And I went to the emergency room. They just gave me some Vicodin. They're like, it's a pulled muscle. You'll be fine in a week. And I wasn't. It just started spreading and diffusing and going all over my body. And I was ultimately, after probably 6 months, diagnosed with fibromyalgia, so chronic pain. And so this is literally, I had a neck brace and a bottle of Vicodin with me when I was studying for the bar exam. It was just like...
Not ideal studying conditions.
No, not at all. And I had to quit the Vicodin because I couldn't do anything on it. So yeah. I basically just white-knuckled it. Passed the bar and started working on September 4th, 2001. So literally a week before 9/11, I started my legal career. And I was sick the entire time. I was pushing through, and I was very mentally focused, but it was 80 hours a week. And I joined kind of a mid-sized lifestyle firm in downtown Chicago, but it's just, it's insane what they expect of you. And so I lasted for about a year before I ended up in the hospital with a panic attack.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, no. And it's just like every 6 months I would get these side effects from the previous medications that they put me on. And so they put me on another one. And so by the time I was, I was on about 25 pills a day by the time I was 30, I would say. And so after about a year, landed in the hospital, I go back to my firm and I say, my doctors have told me I need to work part-time. And mind you, I work for a labor and employment firm. So all day, every day, I'm counseling employers on what to do when their employees come and say, my doctors say I can only work part-time. And my firm looked at me and they were like, yeah, that's fine. That's 40 hours a week. I was like, that's not really, like, you're not getting it. But, what choice did I have?
Sure.
So I did it for about a year, and I ended up getting fired because I just could not. I literally could not do the work. which, you know, for a lifelong straight A student, perfectionist, I mean, that's literally the worst thing in the world that can happen, or that could have happened for my ego at the time, was like getting fired from your first job.
Yeah. I like that you said for your ego.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not for you, for your
No,
ego.
not for me.
Huge,
At the
important
point, I
distinction,
didn't know.
everybody.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this at that
Sure.
time. So I was really, you know, in a bad place because I really identified with my ego, with my thoughts, all of that. And so, yeah, I ended up actually getting fired from my first 2 or 3 jobs because they were all in the legal field, and I was so sick, I just couldn't. So
I didn't even know you had 3 firings. I mean, I have one that I'm super proud of, and that was the impetus for Fire Your Job, Find Your Passion. But you were, I mean, so organically and synchronistically the perfect, I mean, times 3, baby.
Oh, yeah.
That's...
Actually, I think I have one more other. So yeah, I've obviously let go of that perfectionist thing.
I don't know if I got fired from my waitering job back in the day. I just sort of stopped going. So it was one of those mutual, you know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure if you look back at the records, sorry, Macaroni Grill, I don't think, yeah.
What are you going to do?
Termination, probably.
Well, yeah, so at that point, I was really bad. I took a year and a half off. My husband at the time and I moved to London for his job. I thought, wow, I can rest. I can, you know, recoup. And that's not what happened. And it's usually not what happens with chronic pain. Like you don't just rest and then you get better. There are a lot of underlying things. And so when we came back, I, you know, tried to get a part-time job, and our marriage ended up ending due to my health issues. And it was just, I was in this really bad place. And so I created a support group on meetup.com way back in the day. And it was for fibromyalgia support because in Chicago, there wasn't a fibromyalgia support group. But when I went on Meetup, there were 75 people like looking for one. So I was like, well, how hard is it? You like say when and where and you go support each other. Like, I can do that. So I started it. And the very first day, this woman showed up and she had a plate of donuts. Or I did, because I wanted to be a good hostess. And this woman showed up and she's like, well, that's why you have fibromyalgia. And I was like, bitch, I brought you donuts. Like, where's the love? Where's the gratitude? Like, you know, but that was
reality just
that
right
was
in the
me
face.
In those days.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to bring a guest speaker next month. Can I? And I said, great, because I had no idea what I was doing with this. As
we all do at first, and even now, sort of.
Making it up as you go. That's, I think, the biggest secret to life for all adults is realizing everyone is making it up.
100%. One of the most
knows what they're doing.
Yeah, one of the most powerful things that was ever said to me was, you know, in studying, you know, I, like you, started with just the plan of like, well, I'm fired, I'm going to go to a yoga teacher training, because I literally whittled down everything to like the last little bit of like, what are the things that bring me joy? And it was a very short list at that point, right? Because you're just in that rat race, right? You're on the hamster wheel, I say all the time. And you know, that blessing of being able to step back from it, but then you're like, you know, it's so overwhelming. Like, where do I, you know, start? What exactly? What do I do? And I was at an entrepreneurship conference once, and, you know, one of the speakers said, you know, just be okay with taking imperfect action. You know, stop trying to make everything like, you know, and I apply that now. Like, I send out emails, the links are broken. So, you know, it's like, you gotta go. You gotta do, you know what I mean?
Progress, not perfection.
Yes, 100%. So I love that.
So anyway, this woman comes in the next month. She is a raw foodist, raw vegan, and she claims that she cured her fibromyalgia with it. And I thought, well, okay, that's literally like the one thing I haven't tried, because I'd been going from doctor to doctor to doctor. So
it's interesting how they don't
tell you.
In the West,
they just don't know.
Honestly.
Yeah, like I've had my moments of like,
I love that you said that. Yeah,
hating them, but honestly, the average med student studies nutrition for a total of 3 hours during medical school.
Yeah,
literally, they don't cover it.
Yeah,
so it's not in your mind frame.
Sure.
And so I had I'm trying to think where I want to go with this. So basically, I decided that I was going to go 100% raw vegan because One, that's just
Donuts
kind
to raw vegan.
that's like the kind of person I am. I'm kind of like go big or go home. And I also at the time hated fruits and vegetables. So the idea of being raw vegan like scared the crap out of me. But in my mind I thought, okay, if I try this 100% for a week and it doesn't work, then I know it didn't work.
Did you secretly like want to have the moment of going back and telling that lady like it didn't work?
I just wanted to be able to go back and have like, donuts and soda and stuff. Like,
sort of what I was asking. Yeah.
The thought of giving up all of my favorite foods scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
But I was at that point where I was so desperate to feel better that I was willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so I did. I bought a Vitamix. I bought all this, spirulina. I had no idea what that was. I'd never been in a Whole Foods. I had no clue what I was doing. And so I went 100% raw vegan. And on day 5, apologies for TMI, I went and got my first colonic. That was literally an hour later is when it was clouds parting. Oh my God, it was that kind of moment because my body had been so toxic for so long that messes up your ability to think. You can't literally, it contributes to depression. Inflammation is just, whatever. And so it was the first moment in so long that I could actually think clearly. And I thought, oh my God, this is working. And oh crap, now I have to eat fruits and vegetables the rest of my life. But I was so excited, and so over the course of the next 5-6 months, I weaned myself off all of my meds. I lost a whole bunch of weight. It was really...
Without giving up organs this time?
No organ donation. It was lovely. But it was just effortless because my body was like, oh my God, finally nutrients. We can work with this. And at that point, I just knew, with that clarity, I knew the law was not for me. At that point, I had gotten to where I was working for a legal aid organization in downtown Chicago, which definitely, out of all of my legal jobs, fulfilled that moral and ethical, fight that I have within me for justice. But it just was not the right fit. The law is it's how our legal system is set up, unfortunately, is there really is there has to be a winner and a loser. There are mediations and things like that, but it's really it's a battle. People talk about fighting this and doing this. And as I felt better, and as I was starting to explore this whole new world of yoga and meditation and just things that made me feel better, I wanted to collaborate with people. I did not want to compete with them. It was so uninteresting to me. And so, when I have a client who would sit down and be like, this guy did this to me and I want to sue him for all he's worth and blah, blah, blah. And I would look down at the file and it happened 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Dude, just go live your life. Be happy. Which is obviously not.
Can't really do that. Yeah.
So, so that's when I realized.
I was looking for the right word. I was yes. Yeah. That's not doing your job. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was obviously a big decision because here I'd put so much time, so much energy, so much money towards getting my law degree. And it's such a recognized achievement in our society, and people look up to you, and to be able to just at that point I was in my early 30s. I was not that old, and so to be able to be giving that up, but I just I could either power through for the next 30 years and something I really didn't want, or I could go look for something I actually really enjoyed and fulfilled me. So that's what I decided to do. It's
such a beautiful thing, right? To have, I just wrote about this recently, but we sometimes have voluntary, involuntary, right? Stepping back moments, right? I call it the hard self-audit, and whether it's picking to go on a yoga retreat or getting fired from a job or just going on vacation or just stepping out of your day-to-day, right? That really allows us the space to start to see. And then you supplement that, right, with this drastic lifestyle change, right? And it's amazing how just those two things, this is why it's such a core of what I do, is not only just to step away, but let's move our bodies, let's breathe, let's eat a little bit healthier. And even just for a few days, right? The clarity, like the things that serve you become so apparent, and the synchronicities start to come pouring in.
It's like literally having a veil lifted off.
Yes.
And that's when I knew I also needed to leave Chicago, because I caught myself one day. I lived right in Boys Town, right near, I was on Halstead and Lakeshore Drive, so right near Wrigley Field. And I was half a block away from Lakeshore Drive, so the lake, and that's where I would catch my bus to go downtown to work. And one day, after I had been, raw for several months, and, I'd been drinking green juices and doing all of these things, I caught myself walking home one day, and I was on that little strip of grass that you see between the sidewalk and the street. And I was, it was a subconscious thing, but I kind of caught myself, and I'm like, well, why am I doing this? And I realized it was because that was the only time ever I touched nature. And that's when I realized, you know what? I think I need to change a lot here. Like, I need to not only, I was still practicing at the time, but I was flirting with leaving. And then I was like, I think I need to check out other places too. By that point, I had been in Chicago almost 10 years, and it felt like that chapter was coming to a close. I'd been divorced, I'd done all these things, and I just wanted to be more, just live a simpler, just a life more connected to nature, like the rhythms of nature and things like that. Because it had made such a big difference in my life. So that's ultimately how, at that point, I discovered Asheville, North Carolina, and I moved down there. And then the next step in my career thing was, I just, asked myself, what would I regret on my deathbed if I don't try?
That's a good one.
That was my question.
That's a good one.
And
last day of your life. Yeah.
What do I really, what have I always wanted to do? And at that point, it came back as acting, which was hysterical to me, because I was like, you just left Chicago, which is like great acting city.
Now you're in Asheville,
North Carolina. Okay, right.
Hollywood part two. No, not exactly.
But how universe always provides, if you're in alignment, literally after I had that conversation with myself and said, well, yeah, why not? Something will happen. I know how the laws work. Like, I can create something. The next week, there was an ad in the paper opening a new acting school. Come free for a week, try all the classes, meet all the teachers.
Do all the things.
I went every day for the week. The last teacher, I sat down. I was like, this is my guy. He became my mentor, my agent, one of pretty much like my second father. We, together with the other, like some of the other early students, we created this whole like acting co-op that still exists today.
Amazing.
That gives people jobs.
How long was this after you moved to Asheville, like timing wise, guessing? About
a year or two.
So pretty quick response on your...
Yeah, I flitted around for a couple, for a while, and, just paying rent and figuring out what I wanted to do. But it was just, I hit this point where I thought, I need to follow something I'm passionate about. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to change the world. I'm not under any orders to change the world, but what is going to light me up inside? Because with the obvious sensitivities that my body has, I'm not going to be able to just work indiscriminately. Like, that will burn me out again.
It's such an important step, right? And I really just want to take a moment to touch with that, because, when I went into teaching yoga, I took a lot of my sort of foundational tools and skills, right, from my corporate life, and tried to take that round peg and jam it into the square hole of being a yoga teacher, right? And it's through necessity a little bit too, right? I'm in New York City. It's hyper competitive to get jobs in teaching. You can't get like privates yet because you're sort of figuring out how to even do this thing, you know what I mean? Right. And you're taking whatever pay you can get, and you're traveling. I can remember I took 2 trains from Hoboken to Brooklyn to teach my very first yoga class. It was all donation based. And after an orange juice and a bagel, I came home with like $8.50 in my pocket. But you know, what's funny is I was stoked. Like I was like, yes, like I did it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then you start to do that internal, you know, equation, the mind equation, right? The analytical equation of like, well, I need to make rent and I need to do this, and I need to do that, right? So I started jamming 20, 25 classes a week into my schedule, and I'm like, you know, like auditioning all over the place, you know, like I said, kind of taking that round peg and putting it in. And that, you know, only lasts for so long before you start to regress and you have those similar sort of thought patterns, and you start to, body started to break down. I started getting injured, couldn't understand why, couldn't sleep, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is a hugely important asterisk to say that, you know, as you're going to find your purpose and your path, you're going to be excited, right? And you're going to want to save the world, like you said. And only within this last, like even 6 months, I've had this epiphany about self-care and just like self-love and like affirming to myself that I'm good at what I do. And I have all these testimonials, and people come on retreats and have amazing breakthroughs and, you know, heal things. And they follow that path of quitting their job and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, yay. And then I come home and I start teaching again, and I'm just like, oh my God, like you need to take this time, you know, to refill. It's a corny saying, but it's like you can't pour from an empty cup, you know, and it's so true. So I want people to realize you can't just take that 80-hour-a-week, you know, mold and try to shove it into something. Even if you love it to death, you know, you have to have those moments of stepping back and refilling, or it won't, you know,
absolutely,
it won't go that way.
I work with a lot of clients who are moving from kind of corporate, really high pressure job scenario into something that they're more passionate about. And what I always remind them is you cannot have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. So if you are thinking, okay, I just quit here, I'm going to become, like, say, a photographer. I'm going to, you know, now I'm going to do all these things, and you have this vision of your mind in the future where you're a famous photographer and you make millions on set and blah, 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 and you're doing all these really cool shoots. Okay, that's great. Hold that vision. But if every day you're waking up and you're berating yourself and you're not taking care of yourself and you're burning out and you're whatever, like frustrated with accounting software because you never had to do that and all these things, there's no way you're going to get to that vision, because you're literally holding yourself in this vibration of frustration, overwhelmment, and that can't translate into the vision that you see. Like you literally have to. The fastest way to that vision is to start enjoying your life now. Like, not, I mean, obviously you got to get some stuff done, but like, but you can take a walk in the middle of the day. That's why you've made this transition, is so you can have that freedom.
Entrepreneur naps. It's like one of my favorite things.
Literally. I haven't woken up to an alarm clock in years.
I mean, it's
unless I'm like catching a flight or something. And honestly, I usually book my flight so I can wake up without an alarm. Sleep is, to me, my God, that is like nothing gets between me and sleep nowadays. I don't like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's really not worth it. And I will preface that by saying I am blessed in my lifestyle that, you know, I don't have children. So I understand a lot of people have a lot more demands on their time, but you have to get really, really cutthroat with your time.
Totally. I just wrote about
literally have to. I mean, I tell clients, like, I want you to cut out half of your obligations. Like, honestly.
Yeah. And, you know, like in talking about that self-audit, I was just writing about this, like, when people come on retreat, you know, we run these retreats, we call them digital detoxes. And, you know, I always say to people, because some people are really resistant. I mean, listen, it's an addiction. I still have memories of the addiction working from media, because I used to stare at 6 screens a day, the tablet, the laptop. I'd go to lunch, like staring like this as I'm like ordering, you know, at the cafe. And so I get it, but, you know, people are always like kind of shy to do it. But then when they do it, they're happy. As I have them pull out their phones and I say, okay, let's like look at how much time you spent on apps throughout the course of the week, or just on the screen in general. Exactly. And when they look at it, it's like, well, you know, some people it's, you know, 20, 30 minutes of Facebook, 20, 30 minutes of Instagram. And then people, it's like hours. And I'm like, we can all find it. You know, we can find 20 minutes of mindfulness, no matter who you are, right? Absolutely. You can find 20 minutes to deep breathe, to do a guided meditation, right? To even just move your body a little bit. And that has to start to surpass the importance of
Absolutely.
something.
Yeah.
Like you have to do the org chart and just at least move it up, at least a few slots. And yeah, kids and all that kind of stuff, totally get it. I'm also blessed, don't have, all that. So we should preface that by saying like blessed
Yes.
in that way. Yes. But also, we all have it. We all have 20 minutes. We all have at least, a little bit of time that we can carve out.
J-Lo meditates twice a day. She does transcendental meditation.
She was in one of my yoga classes. True story.
There you go.
Yeah.
That woman, she has some to-do lists.
I'm sure. Yeah, she's doing stuff.
Seriously.
Yeah.
If she can fit it in, you can fit it in.
100,000%.
It has to be, because how I explain it to people is meditation, it's not only just this time that you're taking for yourself to quiet your mind. And I mean, there's so many physical proven benefits of it. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
We could do a whole separate episode on that.
But for me, the most important aspect to it is my quality time. We're talking like love language. It's my quality time with my inner being, or source, or your guardian angel, or God, or
higher self. Pick
call
whatever you want, but
whatever you call it, it's all good.
you're non-crazy, whatever you want.
Exactly. But that's my time to, and I think of it as an actual physical relationship, like a friendship that I have to nurture and support and water and really nurture, because it gives so much back to me.
Yeah.
And that's the time to create. I mean, my God, I can't say enough about meditation, but literally, if that's the only change you make in your entire life, and you stay in a corporate job and but you learn to meditate 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes maybe before like dinner.
Yeah.
Life changing.
Yeah.
Not only will you be happier in your job, you'll have more energy, you'll have more creative impulses, like so much benefit just from that one thing. And people, they don't do it, and I get it. It's hard because we are not meant, our brains are not meant to be quiet. And I think that's where people falter a lot with meditation, is that they think the goal of it, or their expectation is, I have to get my mind to be silent. But that's literally impossible. It's literally like trying to sit down.
No, this thing's job is to problem solve. Exactly.
That's what it does. You wouldn't sit down and say, well, for the next 15 minutes, heart, don't beat.
Yeah.
No. So your job isn't to silence your mind. It's just to quiet it and just not to attach to the thoughts. Just don't go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Pick a word that you go back to, or go back to listening to your breath, or water, whatever you're listening to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, just do it. Do it for 10-15 minutes. It's called a practice, just like yoga. You're never supposed to be perfect at it, but the benefits of it are just so.
And I want to touch on what you just said, because I'm created this whole love affair, having done Joe Dispenza's week-long retreat recently, and it just took my meditation to a whole nother. And I am somebody, if you're watching or listening to this, first few times I ever sat to meditate, and we're only talking a few years ago, where I really got serious about it. I remember setting a clock for 15 minutes, and I was sitting there and I was just stewing and fidgeting, and I was like, okay, that's almost it. That's almost it. I've got to be close. And I'm like, I can't sit anymore. And I looked, and it was not even halfway. It was 6.5 minutes. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, and you're in a place of I can't do it, I get it. I totally get it. And there's, good mornings and bad mornings. There's good, sits and bad sits. And I don't even think there's such thing as a bad, right? Because like you said before, no amount of effort towards anything, right? Your legal career, my journalism career, it always ends up being beneficial in some ways. And you're going to get those benefits whether you're seasoned and you're going deep, or whether you're just trying to sit still and make it to 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
And you have to start at that threshold. But the other thing I really wanted to touch on is, I went on this retreat recently, and I had this just kind of reaffirmation of, meditation being a self-love, practice. Hi, Theo. And, I cognitively knew that for such a long time, but something shifted where we did it, I mean, 6 hours a day. We started at 4 in the morning. You learn the benefits of getting up super early. Now, I'm not a morning person. Same, like I am not the set the alarm and stuff. But that shift of thinking it as this time to get to know yourself and to love yourself and to connect to something deeper, now like I'm like instinctually getting up between 4 and 4:30, and I'm just like excited. Like my body's not excited. Like my body's like, let's stay here where it's warm, let's roll over, like let's like blah blah blah. But because of that shift in the mindset of like, no, this is your time to be your best self, and your creative juices are going to flow, and you're going to have these unbelievable synchronicities and breakthroughs of like, I should do this, I shouldn't do that. Like that feeling, that knowingness, right? Like is so powerful that you'll start to not want to trade it for sleep, for the argument that you might have, the going faster on the freeway. Like it just, you want to be in that state so badly, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's really beautiful that, you know, you frame it that way. And so I'm curious, because I love that we could go 80,000 different directions and I could talk to you for the next 2 hours. So you're in Raleigh, you are starting to find your passion, your body's starting to heal itself. Take me from there to where you are now with meditation and teaching other people that, and how did that kind of come together?
Well, and I also had a whole entire other career in there. So I'm really great at helping people through transitions. So while I was acting and I was meditating more, I started getting creative impulses. And one of the impulses was one day I was doing a cleanse. Because I was in an on-camera acting class and realized, yes, the camera does add 10 pounds. Like, you need to lose some weight.
Oh, wait, so, this is on camera. No, okay, sorry, never mind.
And so I was doing this cleanse, and you couldn't have, you know, gluten, dairy, sugar, you know, like the main ones. And so at the time, I had this woman who was making food for me. She'd put in my fridge, and she'd always put a little dessert in there. And, you know, I have a sweet tooth, and so the dessert would always not run the entire week. Like it wouldn't last as long. So sometimes there was like a end of the week, like Whole Foods run to get like a chocolate bar or something.
Sure.
So one day I'm just starving. I'm on this cleanse. I run in. I go to the energy bar aisle there, and all I want is an energy bar energy bar. And I literally spent a half hour. I was there reading on the floor all of the labels. And according to this cleanse, I was not allowed to eat any of these energy bars, which I thought was a travesty. And so that was, and then in meditation the next day, it was, you could do that, you could do that, you could do that, you could eat. And so it was just undeniable. And so I ended up creating a bar called Shift Bars, and they were all organic with only 1 gram of sugar, which was like first ever. And it was, I worked on that project, that company, for 5-6 years. I moved out here for it, and it was amazing. It was way more interesting to me eventually than acting, because it was my voice. Acting, you know, they give you a script, they tell you what to say, and a lot of times it's crap. Honestly, like, you know, I was getting auditions all the time for Vampire Diaries, and you know, what was the other one? I can't think of the other one. House of Cards. You know, just very dark, very, you know. And I thought to myself, what if I get these jobs? Like, what if I become a series regular on one of these shows, and then I'm gonna put 14 hours a day into like putting that into the world? That's not interesting to me. Like, I was at this place where I was doing so much personal growth work that I was really starting to like who I was for the first time. Yeah. And I didn't want to pretend to be someone else who honestly wasn't really like as conscious. Yeah. Like it caused me stress to do that. Yeah, that's like, when I talk about the self-audit, that's usually, so the first level is just kind of looking at your thoughts, your decisions, your emotions around those things, and seeing how, you know, you're kind of interacting with the world. And then once you sort of feel good about that, well, what are the things that I'm investing my energy into? And then like, what's the ripple effect, right? You start to become more sensitive to, well, oh, it's just my job, so I just go do this, and you know, but now you're more mindful of it, right? Yeah. So for me, it was like, I was making videos that were going out to our target audience was 14 to 22-year-old males, right? And, you know, we were doing sports, and sports just,
was becoming less and less like important to me, because it was just like, this is not even real, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Like, there's actually nothing, like, it's just all fantasy, you know what I mean? So there was that. And then we were selling advertising for betting and alcohol. I mean, like, we were literally running Coors Light ads, and we would have a meeting right before it saying, hey, like, our target audience starts at 14. And I just remember, like, laying in bed at night and just having that gnaw at me, you know what I mean? And, like, I feel like, I don't know what the word is, like a smut peddler, you know what I mean? Like, that's such an antiquated kind of term, but it's that's how I felt. I felt I was like shopping something out that was literally damaging people and damaging the world. And yeah, the more sensitive you get to that, you're just like, you can't ignore it. And the voice just starts to get,
part of it.
Yeah, it gets louder and louder and louder and louder, you know, and yeah.
And our whole society is, you know, set up to numb that voice.
Oh,
so
God,
that
yeah.
you go along with the smut peddling, because smut peddling, there's a lot of money in it. And so, you know, obviously
there is a lot of money in it.
There are a lot of people who want you to continue to do that, and, you know, they
there's one of the like most aha like light bulb moments I had was after I even left television, and I forget who I was reading. It was probably Joe Dispenza or something, but you know, he was talking about how advertising, especially around like pharmaceutical industry, right, says, you know, are you this? Do you feel that? You know, the voice is this, and it's a person that looks better than you look, right? So immediately you're like, oh no, they look better than I do, and they have a problem, and now I have a problem, you know? And it's like, and he goes, there's a reason they call it programming. And I was just like, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, you know? And then when they target you late at night when you're vulnerable, and then you go to sleep, and so there's an incredible machine, that's the only way to put it, in place, right? To not only create lack and create worry and create all, which are primal, you know, emotions and things that are easy to prey upon people with, but then to try to give you the solution, or to give you a way, like you use the word numb, which I think is a great word, right? To distract us and to take us. And yeah, there's this machine in place to help us to feel a certain way, and then to give us the solution, right? And it's always exterior from ourselves. It's never looking internally. It's never looking at your diet. It's never looking at your emotions, or, you know, taking time with yourself to connect to something greater, right? It's always like, here's the pill, here's the bar, here's the, you know what I mean?
You're not good enough, you need this, here's the car, all of these things. But it's also not only that on an individual level, it's also dividing us. You know, it's this person is your enemy, this person is your enemy, this person, you know, instead of, hey, we're all supposed to get along and be happy and fulfilled, and
you talked about that with
all these things.
You talked about that with law, right? There's like a winner and a loser. There's no such thing as like a stalemate, basically, except, you know, in whatever particular situations. But I mean, I had it on a double whammy, because I worked in news for a while, where it's all like, you know, they say if it bleeds, it leads, right? It's got to be negative to go on like the front page of the newspaper or whatever. So you're in that cycle all the time. Or then I'm in sports, right? There's always one winner, one loser, right? So there's there's this lack of like cohesiveness. And I think you see that a lot, right? With our, whether it's political system right now, or people's divided opinions about, you know, what's happening with COVID and stuff like that. It's like, it's so easy to forget, right? Like, we're all connected through this beautiful synergy of this universe and energy, like, and there's so much telling us no. You know, stay away, wear a mask, you know, be separate, you know, sorry, we could go off on another.
No, not at all. No.
So you moved to the West Coast.
Moved to the West Coast, and then
you start a bar.
I was to start a bar, and then
not a drinking bar, an
eating bar.
Eating bar.
And it all kind of collapsed. It was one of those divine things where, looking back, I can see exactly why. But when it was happening, it was like, what is going on? I literally, you know, have
this was all meant to be.
Yeah, so, you know,
I'm doing good in the world. I
had a Grammy-winning like investor. We had like all these things and stuff, and then. We did a beta launch, and the bars didn't turn out well, and the co-packer wouldn't redo them, and it was just this big drama. And then my mom actually passed away, and so I took, you know, time away from, you know, to be with her and to go through that transition. And then by the time I came back, you know, and I started to look for new investors to get going again, COVID hit, and then it was, you know, everyone just kind of like went around, and it was this I had to really, really look within, because I had, like you said before, taken that old corporate masculine, mindset and really put it on this company, and was doing a lot of, like, loved it and really brought in the feminine a lot, but also, had goals and was attaching to it from an ego place of, like, this is going to make me rich, this is going to make me famous, this is going to help me, do all of these things. And it's just not going. And it's starting to really, like, wear on me physically, mentally. Like, I can't keep this up anymore. And so I let it go. And that was, during the whole quarantine. At the time, my roommate had left and was on the East Coast, so I was, like, all by myself. I was really being careful, due to my immune issues and things like that. And so I was in a pretty dark place. And I really started to coach myself through it and follow things that all of my friends would come to me for advice all the time and do all of these things. And finally a friend of mine reached out and she said, I'm in a really bad place. Someone told me to see a therapist, and your name was the first thing that came to my head. She's like, I don't want to talk to a therapist. I want to talk to you. You always give really good advice. Like, you always just, like, I wanted to talk to you. And I thought, okay, cool. Thank you. And so, but it was beautiful because it got me out of my own head. I'd been in my room, like, mulling over my own crap forever. And to get myself out of that, which is, the blessing of service, is that, you're focusing on someone else. And obviously you can take that to extreme, but, like, it's a wonderful gift. And for me, I'm always honored when people share their most vulnerable things with me, because that means that they trust me enough to open up. A lot of people be like, I'm sorry, I'm crying. I'm like, no, my God, are you kidding? Like, that
Oh my God, I love when people cry.
Thank
I know that
you.
sounds morbid, but we
so
need it.
Beautiful.
We need it so much.
It's so beautiful. And so I had this session with her. She had several breakthroughs, sobbed twice, was just, and wrote me the next day and said, oh my God, like, thank you. Can we do that again? And all of these things. And I realized, I felt so good at doing it. And then literally, and I remember catching myself, and I thought, Emily, you don't have to monetize this. Like, because, when you're in that entrepreneurial space, a lot of times it's like, And I was like, why don't you just enjoy the fact that you had a wonderful connection with your friend, you helped her, you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I plan, God laughs. And so the next day I get this email from a mentor of mine who I had became a shamanic priestess with under the tutelage of, and she said, I'm starting a coaching company based on the Hermetic principles.
This was the next day?
The next day.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to become one of the lead coaches. Would you be open to that? And I just thought, well, yeah. And then to look back at all of my careers, it was this just, like, aha moment of, I've always been a coach. That's what I do. As a lawyer, you counsel other people. As an actor, honestly, my really dream when I, thought about, like, oh, I want to win an Oscar and all of these things, it wasn't about the art of acting. It was about having a platform that people would listen to me so that I could put some positive messaging into the world. And then with Shift Bars, all of my blogs, like, none of them had anything to do with, like, nutrition or sugar, like you'd think. All of them, they were about law of attraction. Like, all of these, like, it was all personal growth stuff. And it was basically me thinking, well, no one's just going to listen to me just because. So I'm going to taunt you with this, like, really yummy or like bar, and then you'll listen to me.
I have a weekend yoga class, and we always offer some kind of food. And I say, it's like, the yoga's good, but it's like, kind of draw them in with the
absolutely
with the food.
Trojan horse. I mean, like, without a doubt. And so I literally had this, like, aha moment of, do I really want to run a company, like a food bar company, no, that's another 80-hour-a-week gig. Easy in the beginning of a startup. Are you kidding me? Like, that would have killed me. And when all I really want to do is connect with people, teach them the things that have worked for me.
Sure.
Because I've now been in this game for 13 years and I have tried everything. I am a trier. Like, that is like what I
Serial
do.
trier.
I have to like try things to see if they work
Sure.
for me. And so my friend calls me I can't think of the word now. It just basically, anytime she's having an issue, like, I can say exactly, like, read this book, and she's like, oh my God, that was the perfect.
Yeah. You're a fixer, kind
exactly.
of. Yeah.
And so to be able to do that for people is amazing. And it's something that I can do without killing myself physically.
Yeah.
So all of these things that have like woven in from all of the different places, whereas before I thought I was kind of schizophrenic, but I heard a great term the other day. These two women, there's a TED Talk, and they wrote about squiggly career paths.
Oh yeah.
So everyone thinks a career path is supposed
to
be
this,
and it's like, no, it's like,
I love that. Yeah.
And
it should be.
And it should be.
This looks so boring. Like, this is so boring, you know?
It's this old paradigm. It's,
Yeah.
Like get a job in a factory and work for 40 years and get a watch at the end. Like, it's just not where we are anymore as a society.
Yeah.
So I think taking the shame off of not sticking it out, obviously doing the work. Like, if you're in a situation where you're not happy, starting to do the work while you're still there. Because if you just leave, you take yourself with you.
Yeah.
And if your consciousness is not raising, you're going to attract, the next situation is going to have the same problems that you have right now.
Totally. And sorry, that's just a phrase like Joe Dispenza uses a lot. I talk to people about it on retreat all the time. It's like, if you're listening to this, you're watching this, like, the end results of this, right? Of the synchronicities, of the career path changes, of being in a place like San Diego, right? The thing that sometimes gets overlooked, right, is the doing the work, right? Like, doing the work. And we're not talking about working an 80-hour week. We're not talking about spending, time or money or doing entrepreneurship conferences or buying all these books, right? Like, those things are wonderfully helpful in the grand scheme of everything. And all of your experiences, right? Like, you're an amalgamation of all the things that you've ever done. We were talking about that before. But it's like, if you don't take the time to really get to know yourself, I call it like peeling back the onion. If you don't peel back the onion to the things that you're really super passionate about, and then watch, right? Like the complete diet, right? Like, when you eat something, how do you feel? When you hang out with somebody, how do you feel, right? When you move your body and through time and space to different things, to different environments, when you're having that moment in Chicago of touching the grass and saying like, oh my gosh, like, this is actually what serves me. If you don't check in with those, if you don't create the space to do that, you'll just, like you said, kind of continue in that loop of, it's matter to matter. It's cause and effect. It's like, I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try that. But you'll never actually be able to feel into it, right? Like, you'll never actually be able to connect to it on a deeper level. You'll still be caught in that old paradigm of like, I'm going to set this plan, I'm going to move to it. If you're not stepping back to check in with it, you don't have the opportunity to sort of pivot. And it's such a beautiful reminder of, we are constantly, or hopefully we are constantly evolving, right? We're evolutionary beings, right? So the bar, I was shocked. When we talked about your story, I didn't realize the bar was just, kind of dying out during COVID. I thought that was like years and years and years ago. I mean, for me, like, we were supposed to go on this Bali retreat last year. This was like the amalgamation of all my hard work to like build up to doing a huge 10-day overseas event. I've been there 6 times. I've scouted everything out. It's like, yay, we're ready. We get there 3 days in, we're like, we have to come home. Just this last week, they announced like the rules are just, you just basically can't go there. So now again, I'm having to step back. I'm going to Costa Rica in a few days now to try to pivot again, right? To try to figure something else out. And I won't go into all the synchronicities of the Costa Rica trip, but it's like, yeah, if you don't allow yourself to squiggly line, you know what I mean? You'll always be in that situation of kind of forcing or pushing, and then you're back to that getting up for work and forcing yourself into the shower, forcing yourself into the subway, forcing yourself to the job that you don't really love. So yeah, it's such a beautiful, testament to gotta take that time, gotta do the work, gotta step back, and you'll know,
and you know. Trust. Okay, so there are two ways of looking at our life experience. There is the universe is a friendly, loving place that wants the best for me, or the world is a dangerous place and I have to protect myself from it.
That first one sounds way better.
Right? And guess what? You literally get to choose. Like, you literally... It's your choice.
Yeah.
You might have thought the latter for a really long time, and so that's a habit of thought.
And again, we're programmed and pushed into that paradigm.
Everything, all of the messaging.
If you're listening to this going, that sounds like BS, I get it. Like, I get it.
But all of the people I promise, all of the people who you look up to, who you think do great things, Oprah, LeBron, Beyonce, I swear to God, they all think the world is a friendly place that loves them and wants the best for them. And if you call yourself a person of faith, it's literally what you have faith in. So if you are in this place of, I can take a moment to connect with myself and listen to that inner voice and follow it because I trust that it loves me and wants only good for me and knows what I want, then you're way more apt to take that time. Whereas,
and if you're doing the work, then you're clear on what you want.
Exactly.
Right? Otherwise, you're just doing.
Yeah. I remember, for those of you who've not heard of like Abraham Hicks' Law of Attraction, please check them out. But they're the one thing that I share with people immediately off the bat is something that blew my mind when I first heard it, because it's so simple and yet it's so true, and it's just, no one ever teaches us this, but it's that our emotions are literally our guidance system. They are literally our GPS. So if you think a thought, and it's like thought by thought, like this is real time, it goes as fast as you go. If you're thinking a thought and say it is, I'm stupid, I'm fat, I'm broke, I'm worthless, I'm never, how does that thought make you feel? Probably not too good. Literally, that is the sign that your inner being, God, source, whatever you want to call it, does not agree with that thought.
I call it the hell yes rule. Like, everything has to feel like a hell yes for me. Like, if it's even wishy-washy, because then you'll step into that, right? You'll start to move into that energy, into that vibration. And now the universe is like, well, okay, he's kind of okay with wishy-washy. He's kind of okay with okay. You know what I mean? So you'll get that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's literally to be able to pivot and say, wait, okay, if I say I'm fat and it feels bad, then what would my inner being be thinking right now?
Yeah.
Oh, my inner being loves my body. It's so grateful for it.
After you've developed that relationship, I can't say that enough, because I'm not just telling you to like go quit your job. I'm not just telling you to like go run away from the things that you know are a hell no, because we know what things are a hell no, right? But to have the exit strategy or the plan, right, you have to know what the hell yes is. Right? It's so amazing, like people that get caught in the cycles, right? And I was there. I literally had to have an epiphany moment of sitting on a weekend and just being like, okay, I'm done with this job. I have all this free time. What the heck do I even like? You know what I mean? And it was like hockey and yoga. And I was like, oh, okay, those are the only two things that I can vehemently say like hell yes to. Yes. And then I was like, I don't even need to like, monetize or create a career path. I was just like, how do I do more of that? So I signed up for teacher training because I'm like, well, I'm gonna do yoga for 3 straight months. Yeah. And it wasn't like I want to be a yoga teacher. Even the story, I won't go all the way into it, but like of doing my first retreat was wanting to do self-care, like we talked about, and wanting to go to Costa Rica. And I was like, accidentally, after a few weeks after telling my students this, I was like, well, now I'm actually leading a yoga retreat, you know? And so the universe will put those things on your path the more you do the inner work. You can't go Google it. You can't go find it on Facebook. You know, like you need to step back, do that work, get the hell no's out of the way, yes, but also have the hell yeses be ready to go, you know?
And know that it is a process. Like you
Yes.
can literally, you know, most of us have been swimming in this soup of, you know, programming and negativity and all of these things for decades. Okay. But a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So you can switch them, but it's going to be, you know, a process of, if a train is going 100 miles in that direction, like you can't just flip it on a dime. Like you got to slow it down and then stop it and then turn it around and then get it going and then get the momentum going.
Yeah.
And so it's a process of, you know, working on yourself, hopefully having a support system to do that with, because it can get lonely, because the whole push of the world is going to say, hi.
Hey, Lola.
Is going to say, no, complain with me, please. Like, let's get a bottle of wine and get wasted and, and veg out in front of Netflix and complain about our lives.
Yeah.
That's where most people are.
The train analogy is so good, right? Because when there's so much momentum going in that direction,
so
right?
You gotta be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
You're not gonna like get like, it's not gonna flip overnight. Does it get easier? Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you start to change your friends, you start to change your environment. And I'm not saying like you have to swear, because I still have people from my former like going out, you know, drinking life, you know, working all the time life, like, and they're still wonderful people, right? And it's funny because actually a lot of them, you know, at first didn't really get it, you know, like the shift in lifestyle and then moving to California. And then all of a sudden, like, I'd get texts from like my college roommate who, like, we never did anything but like, you know, go out and party together. And he's like, what about meditation? You know, what about like, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, yay, you know, so now you're attracting that so strongly, right? You're actually now able to help. And I want to hear more about, so you got that opportunity, right, to step into the coaching space, the very synchronistic next day opportunity. So how does it evolve from there?
Well, so now what I do is I work with clients one-on-one, but then I also have a group program, because I'm just really called to create community for people. Because like I said, this can be, if you don't have that support system right away, this can be a lonely journey in the beginning. You know, you're changing all of these things. You know, you're maybe changing your diet, you're changing your habits, you're meditating more, you're doing all of this stuff, and who's supporting you in that? And a lot of times, you know, even the people who love us most, they love us, but like maybe that's just not their jam. Like they don't, you know, like, and it doesn't have to be their jam.
And you might get pushback and resistance a little bit too. Like that's way common, so, you know.
But it, you know, to also not fall in the trap of, you know, trying to convert people. So really working on yourself, not saying, oh, you have to do this with me. Trusting that if you're in this vibe and you get this momentum going, you'll attract people to you. They'll come find you. You will not be, you will have awesome new people in your life. And you'll still be able to, you're still in contact with the other people, maybe just not as much, you know. It's just kind of a great analogy my friend uses is seats on the bus. So maybe you're driving the bus, it's your bus, you're in the driver's seat, and you got all these people in the back. Well, maybe your mom always sat right behind you and was always talking in your ear and not maybe saying the nicest things and maybe criticizing every choice you've ever made and like all of these things, right? Maybe it's not time to move mom like towards the back of the bus.
Yeah, don't throw her off just yet.
No,
but
she can hang out. There's a party back there. But like maybe call up that new person that you met in yoga class. Who's saying, you can do this. Oh my God, let me introduce you to this person and this person. You know, you just you're in control of what gets airtime in your life. And I think we forget that a lot, and we are, you know, programmed to be people pleasers and, you know, put other people's needs before us. And when you get really good at focusing on creating the container for you to have the best life, it's not selfish. It is the most selfless thing that you can do, because you, like you said, once you're strong, and you're vibing high, the opportunities for service and to give back are just tenfold. I mean, it's just so amazing. Plus, you feel good. You're happy. I always tell people, in 8th grade, my middle school did a poll, for the yearbook at the end, and I was voted most pessimistic. So if I can shift my mindset, I'm now like literally one of the happiest people I know. Like that's. I mean,
listen,
and it's not
working in news. Like I tell the story of like I had a college professor. Yeah, I had a college professor tell us, he was an old school, worked for the New York Times, and was like, if you're going to be in journalism, you have to get used to the fact that you're never going to do stories about the school bus that makes it safely to school and the airplane that lands safely on the ground. And I was just like, wow, like that's, and then continued. Yeah. But I continued along that path, that's how you look at, the whole world at that point. You start to look in judgment of everything. And unfortunately, you start to look at the negative, and this is a very primal thing, right? We do this on a deep level when we don't have the ability to sort of, we evolved to a certain point, but we brought a lot of traits with us, right? And one of the things that I've been fascinated with studying neuroscience and the nervous system is that, these functions of our, sympathetic system, the fight, flight, run, and hide, right? Like these are important things that kept our species alive, right? When we were running from tigers and, basically sustaining, our species. But unfortunately, what's happened now is we've carried that with us, right? And we start to apply it to things that it doesn't serve, right? Like our boss isn't going to, kill us like our, the guy driving.
It feels like it sometimes.
Oh, 1,000%, because chemically we're in that same sort of state, right? The person that's going too slow on the freeway is not going to stop you from getting to the restaurant to eat the meal. They're not keeping you from eating, right? But we wire those same sort of pathways, right? And not to go deep down the, the neuroscience rabbit hole, but, chemicals that, happen in our body, that respond in our body when we feel these ways are literally addicting.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when I started reading about how, being angry or being anxious or being frustrated, right? Like if we do that enough times over and over and over again, you would call that being uncomfortable. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But it actually on a chemical level becomes comfortable in your body. It becomes
familiar.
Oh my God. And we get so wanting that, and I even see that now with my cell phone sometimes where like I'm, having a little bit of a frustrated day or whatever. And I mindlessly pick up my cell phone because that like dopamine hit, that response of like evening myself out rather than doing breath work or meditating or jumping in the ice bath or whatever it is, right? That like these other practices that have, it still lingers. For somebody that works so hard on it, it still lingers. So when you're new on that path, right, I think it's a beautiful reminder that, a lot of those things are so hardwired that to do the work, right, you really have to take time to overcome that and be okay with small little victories.
Absolutely.
Short what they call the refractory period of that suffering. And then, you'll start to see that period gets shorter and shorter, and then eventually the goal is to not have it, to not even have it surface or surface less, and then eventually
it's always it's not about your first thought, it's about your second thought.
I love that.
The faster you can catch that first thought without it going on
and go easy on yourself, friends. Like
yeah,
all the yoga teachers, all the leaders, all the everybody, they still have it. They've done a better job at catching it, shortening it. Whether you look at the neuroscience, they call it the refractory period, right, where you linger in the emotion, the feeling for a long period of time, or like the yogis in the Yoga Sutras, they talk about this. It's basically, I love that yogic look because they say, listen, we're all going to suffer no matter who you are, Swami, saint, whatever. 100%. It's a necessary part of being human. It's like, how can we shorten it, right? And the more you work before, it's like training for the event, right? Like the more you run before the marathon, right? Yes, the marathon's still going to be difficult, right? But you won't probably die out on mile 2. You'll start to expand your comfort zone with it,
So that's why I've been working more with groups, because I really want that community, because the support is just, you can't do it without other people. Like, I love it. Really, we're social creatures. We're not meant to be. I think if anything, the quarantine taught us, like, if we're all...
I'll hang out with people I don't even like. Just let me hang out with somebody.
If we're all by ourselves in one little room, things go south really quickly. Like
Yeah.
people's mental health go way down. Like
Yeah.
we are designed to be in a community, and to have a community that's, just as excited about this stuff as you are. So you don't have to drag your wife, or you don't have to drag your best friend to something they don't really want to go to.
Yeah.
That's what I love. And so I work with clients one-on-one. I work with them in a group setting. And then every 2 months I do a free week-long online retreat for people. And that's just, for people who, maybe aren't ready for a coach, maybe are saving up money for a coach, like whatever, they're not ready. I can still,
or you might be
serve
listening to
them.
this and not even familiar like with the idea of,
Yeah.
like your last coach might have been your high school basketball coach.
Exactly. And so to have a way for people to get a taste of what coaching is like
Yeah.
for a week. And so every 2 months I do them. You can go to emilyshaules.com to register, and we basically, it's called the Shift Yourself Retreat, and it really is just, the best of the best things that I've found on my path that are going to get people the results quickly.
Yeah.
And if you want to go do it on your own, awesome. You've got a whole bunch of info, have at it. But then if you want further support, then I've got other options, to be able to work with people.
It's amazing. So I'd love to heap some praise on you for multiple things. First is just, it's an incredible offer. I mean, it's an incredible way for people to test the water, so to speak, right? With the idea of being coached, which is amazing. And I really think you and I particularly connected, obviously because of the corporate background, the trying and failing, not even trying and failing. I'm trying to rewire that. See, that's me catching the refractory period.
Well,
trying and learning is what I like to say. There's no failure, there's just learning. That's something I keep reminding myself. But, it's experiential knowledge, right? I think one of the most wonderful things we are, two things, is helpers of others, and you touched a lot on that. And, if you're not feeling in gratitude, if you're struggling in your life a little bit, go help somebody. Like I promise you, go to the food bank, go smile go walk around your block and smile at somebody and see if it just doesn't change your day, right? Like that is one of the most fundamental ways I think we often overlook. There's so much self-help, go try a yoga class, and these things are wonderful, right? Do your breath work, all that. But man, there's no more direct route to joy than just being in service and helping people. And I too, when I first started this journey, I was like, well, I gotta make a living, I gotta monetize, blah, blah, blah. Just go help somebody, go smile at somebody, go strike a conversation with a stranger, go be nice to somebody in a food service role and see how just that little shift, happens. But I think it's important too, when you're considering a retreat, when you're considering coaching, when you're considering anybody that's going to tell you how to be better at humaning, how to be more successful at being joyous more often, check out their story. Like the same way you'd go, I hate to use the analogy, but shop for anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'd want to know what its history was, what the track record was, right? And that's why this has been such a beautiful conversation, is just to hear, a totally different sort of path and totally different places in the world, but to that same sort of end, right? First, how do we just fall back in love with ourselves, make a connection to something greater? And then now how do I create something that's digestible and easy for people to move through the world? And that's who my heroes are. People who have done the work, are doing the work, are not perfect, and really just want to see people live better lives. So we'll link to all that stuff. I'm so excited. Hopefully we're still in the works of this, but having Emily join us for an in-person retreat at some point, possibly doing either workshops or having you lead one and bring your community into that space. And I would really, really love that. So so just in closing, I would love to hear just one thing that you're grateful for today. This is another great exercise. If you're having a bad day, close your eyes, think of one thing that I ask this people all the time. Sometimes I just stop people on the street, I'm like, what are you grateful for? And
Absolutely.
They look at me a little weird sometimes. Less so in California than New York City, but yeah.
I gotta say your dogs. That's, anyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed, and I don't have a dog currently, and so anytime dogs, I'm like that crazy girl who goes up to people and that's me. So to have two dogs, roaming around as we film this. That's highlight.
I must share this as a final little note. Emily and I spoke on the phone once. It was probably for like at least an hour, maybe two. It was like instant, beautiful serendipitous connection. And then she came to my house, knocked on the door, opened the door, and she was like, "Oh, this is Theo and Lola." I think I mentioned the names of my dogs once. And then we were talking about some human, I forget who, but you were like, "I can't remember their name." It's like, that's so perfect. So thank you so much. I love this conversation. I love that this is the kickoff to this fire your job, find your passion. And if you're listening at home, just know that there's a way. There's a way to get out of what you're currently doing. Have your hell yeses, at least a few of them, lined up beforehand. Set yourself up for success. Have a little bit of savings, have a little bit of, I call it padding, right? A little bit of wiggle room. Don't listen to this and go tell your boss off if you have no if you have no backup plan. Don't be stuck watching daytime TV the next day. But it's so possible, and it's so inspiring to hear. And I can't wait to see how the next chapters unfold.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah.